right. Well, welcome everyone to the April Utah Prevention Coalition Association webinar, our monthly webinar, where we provide maybe some skills and some insight. And then we have been highlighting some coalitions so that you can see where there have been successes and things that may be good to replicate. My name is Susanna Burt. You may be familiar with seeing Heidi Baxley talking more, but in case you didn't know, at the end of last month, we basically swapped roles. I am now the chair for the Utah Prevention Coalition Association, and she is chair for the Utah Prevention Advisory Committee. So welcome to a new era with someone who isn't quite as organized as Heidi, but that'll be great. So first, let's welcome Sherry. She's with Murray and Murray Coalition. I couldn't remember the whole name, but the Murray Coalition. So I'm going to turn the time over to Sherry, and we're excited to hear.
Well, thank you. We're honored to be able to be asked to present today. We are Murray Partners for Prevention. And we just wanted to share, we did, our screenshots are going to be, we did a little presentation up at legislation this past winter. So this is kind of the blips of what we shared up there. We started almost 3 years ago. We had a coalition, I guess, in Murray that was run by the city before COVID, and then it died down during COVID, and then they were looking for someone to started anew after that, and I was privileged to get the honor to do that. And what I did is I went around and visited coalitions for about a year to kind of see where our fit was for our city. I've lived in Murray for 47 years. So I kind of have a good idea. Been on planning and zoning, been on the arts council, worked with the city. I'm over our youth government for all 24 years. So kind of have a good feel for the city. So kind of did that to get a feel for it. And incorporated one of my city council friends to go with me to these visits. And then we there was a conference, and our city one of our city council, other one, heard about coalitions, and our school board, not our school board, but our school district social worker was at the same conference. She heard about it, and they're like, oh, we need to do this. We need to start a coalition. And they said, well, someone's already looking into it. So we all came together. And so Sierra Marsh, who is the social representative and worker for the whole school district, is our board chair, and I'm the coordinator. And so that has come together, and that has been an awesome partnership, having the school district as our partner with all the support there. We actually have our monthly meetings at the school district office too. So that makes it super easy. We looked into, let's see, we looked at other networks in the city as we were getting this started. We looked at interfaith, youth, business, nonprofits, city employees, youth programs, so that programs like Boys and Girls Club, like that, citizens, senior citizens, Rotary clubs, exchange clubs, PTA, and we ended up gathering people from all of these groups to be on the board. So we started with 45 people in our first meeting. We now have 65 people. And so the 45 that we initially started with 2.5 years ago are still with us. So that says a lot to me about the passion and the energy behind what we all want for our city to be successful. We put together our work groups, and that just folded together naturally from our members. So that has been a very easy piece. We have our monthly meeting with the coalition, but then our work groups have their own meetings on Zoom together throughout the month. So that was easy. And then the key leaders were obvious. Obvious as we came together with who those would be: the mayor and the city council, and the fire chief, police chief, and Parks and Rec. So that's our key leaders. Right now, we are right here on phase 3 to develop our community profile. We have our data group has spent, it was a 10-hour program. We took 3 different sessions of putting our strategy together from the SHARP data. And I'll show, we have compiled this community report with all of that data, with our challenges and our progress and our positivity of the things that are happening. Um, and that's been, we're actually working on our resource assessment group right now, stepping into the last part of that so we can put up, and we actually had a meeting today, but being able to start compiling all the resources that are around us to support our needs in our community. And we just did a presentation to City Council, I think a week ago, and shared our community report again. And shared where we were at with our milestones and benchmarks, and uh, where there was a lot of data in here that I loved about our city as to students on free and reduced lunch, households with income below poverty, percentage of unemployed adults, percentage of home ownerships, percentage of single parent households. So really good information about the city as a whole, and then the challenges and the needs we have followed up after that. And then this is we have our youth coalition, which is an amazing group of kids and leaders. And so this is, we have done, we, because the school district is our partner, and the city and the Chamber of Commerce is our partner. The Chamber of Commerce is our foundation that our funding comes under. It's not through a city, it's our city. It is through our foundation and the Chamber. So we get asked to do 100 million things, which is so nice. We know we impacted about 17,000 residents this year, and we have 55,000 plus and growing. So that's our goal this year, is to try and get as many out to as many of our residents and get them involved in the community. That's our biggest game plan too, and connect our youth and have recognition for all the things that are going on. So that's
Sherry,
about it.
can you just share one thing I find very unique about the Murray Partners for Prevention Coalition is that they just the way that they involve their youth is very involved. They're even like their whole board maintenance work group is comprised of youth, aside from Sherry and myself. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? The chair of that work group is a youth. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Sherry?
As a matter of fact, she just graduated early and started college last month, and she's going to continue being on our board. We actually have 2 students that have graduated, one last year who is actually on our board still. And the students take it on. They do the icebreakers. They do a highlight. They choose a highlight. They choose their own icebreaker to do for the group each month, and then they choose the highlight and who they want to highlight, and they compose um, a certificate of appreciation to those people. So they take all of that on. They actually have been in our SHARP data group, and they're now in our resource group. And their voice to what is going on in our school district is so valuable. I can't explain that, how valuable that has been to making the success of what we're doing happen. So they're a crucial piece. Thanks, Whitney, for that. Yeah, and these are these are our, and we just did for our data group. We had about 18 people in our data group, and we just did a big thank you for them and gave them, said thanks for filling. What was it, Whitney? Thanks for filling up our tanks, and we want to fill back, refuel yours. And we gave them Chick-fil-A cards and little tags that the students made for them. And yeah, and then we have about 22 signed up for a resource group that's coming up. So we have a really good, strong support system here.
That is so fantastic. Real quick, does anyone have any questions? Sorry, what questions does anyone on the call have for Sherry or Whitney?
Wow.
Are your Chick-fil-A cards donated or do you purchase them?
I'm good friends with the owner of we have 2 Chick-fil-A's, but this time we had to pay for them. but we're working on it. We Swig, I've got a connection with Swig too. We were originally going to do Swig, so we thought we'd just kind of work around and I try and get as much as I can donated.
Yeah, that's good. I was just curious if they had kind of some organizations or companies have like X amount of dollars they'll donate for a particular program. So I didn't know if Chick-fil-A was one of those and we were just not aware that that was a possibility. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Great job.
No, and I think they usually do. They just, our owner, they just remodeled both of their things. And I think they've just really, and the community, everybody goes to them since we're such a small community. We call us Murberry, kind of like Murray has their own school district. We have our own power department, all of that. And so it's a different kind of dynamic in here. So I think everybody goes to Chick-fil-A to ask, but just a little bit of different dynamics in our city. Good question. Any others?
Anyone else?
I have one. This is Julie Anderson. So Sherry, how do you get your youth involved in your data group, especially with their school schedules and everything like that? Did you find a good time for them to participate in that, and how did you do that?
We actually have our meeting from 4 to 5. And so first we got them involved with the coalition and involved with the youth group. And basically, because I run our youth community council, that a lot of those students folded into this. And, just letting them know that all of this, especially on the foundation of creating our coalition, this is such a good piece for recommendations and references for college and for jobs. That was a good link for them. And so we also have a teacher who helps me, Susan Banks, at the school. And she encouraged a lot of her students to join in also. And so we just kind of lucked out with both that combination of youth and I love that even our ones that have gone off to college are still staying connected with us. So,
Thank
but
you. I appreciate that.
yeah, thank you for asking.
Okay, any more questions? All right. Sherry, thank you so much for sharing that. And will that be your slide deck be available that we can send that out to the rest of the group?
You bet. You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we get to turn the time over to Dr. Ed Ho, and he's going to be regaling us with how to use the lovely systems and data that we have, like IBIS, which is like my nemesis. And I'm assuming some of the SHARP, the social indicators website. What do you call it now, Ed? I'm sorry. I'm like totally quoting old things, but going through the data so that we as coalitions can use that data in our planning and putting it together better. So Ed, do you need permission to share? Are you good?
I guess we'll find out in just a second. Let me give it a go real quick. All right, how's that look? All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about the Sharp Web tool. I just have a few slides that I usually go through for just to kind of set the table for what the Sharp is. And I think with this group, you guys are pretty familiar with what the Sharp is. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through these slides. But I will make sure that Susanna and Heidi have a copy that they can send out to everybody. And then just let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to stop me as we talk. And yeah, if I don't see you raise your hand, Susanna, could you just give me a little nudge?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit, kind of set the table a little bit for what the SHARP is. Hopefully you're all familiar, but the core piece of the SHARP is the Prevention Needs Assessment Survey. And it has got a long history of use in our state and nationally. We were one of the states that kind of helped in the development of it. It was developed by the Social Development Research Group at the University of Washington. And the core pieces of the survey are centered around the communities that care, model as well as the risk and protective factor framework for adolescent problem behavior. Um, we have been really fortunate to have started this survey statewide over 20 years ago. Back in 2003 was the first of the statewide administrations of SHARP. And it's great to hear how the Murray Coalition is using the data. And I'm sure all of you that have data available at the community level are probably tapping into that. And if you're not, and you're having any issues with that, feel free to reach out to me so that I can kind of hopefully guide you to the way of using it. Um, but a typical survey in Utah has run between 40,000 kids and 90,000 kids. So we get a really robust sample. The survey is done every other year. Um, so far, it's been on the odd years. That's going to change a little bit, but it's done every other school year. It's kind of the way that we're going to keep it. But it is typically has been done in the springs in the past, but it will be moving to a fall administration in the future. So here are some of the different things that the survey measures, and it does measure a lot of different topics. Like I said, the core part of the survey is based around the risk and protective factor model and the communities that care model. But over the years, within our state, there's been several partnerships that have developed in administering the survey. And so with that, there's been a lot of input as far as what kind of information folks across the state need to kind of look into the well-being and to do health promotion and prevention work. And so our survey is a unique survey to Utah, and it really focuses around the informational needs that some of the different state agencies and particularly Department of Health and Human Services needs around the youth population. So here's kind of a sampling of what is covered. And the content does change a little bit from year to year, but over the years it has actually changed quite a bit. So you can see there's a lot of new things that we're measuring now that are really relevant to like current concerns across the state. And there's a steering committee that works to statewide to kind of shape the survey for the following year. And so it's kind of a year-round process as far as even though the survey is only done every other year, there's always work constantly being done on the survey, getting ready for the next one or getting the data ready from the last one. And here are just a little sampling of kind of, who uses the data. You'll see coalitions are right there in that list. We're really happy to see how widespread the usage of the data is. And we're really happy that it's become a really valuable resource to so many. And then some of the things that you guys use it for, I'm sure some of these are things boxes that you would check in your coalition work, like needs assessment, maybe for grant reporting and that kind of thing as well. But yeah, it is used in a variety of ways by all those different folks that are using the data. So there's a few different ways that you can get SHARP data. Hopefully you're familiar with all of these ways, but if you're not, this is a really good overview. So what we're going to talk about today is that first bullet point, and that's the SHARP web tool, which is an interactive website that really opens up the SHARP data to users and allows you to get into the data and work with it in very customizable ways. But we also have our traditional profile reports that are put out in PDF form these days. And those can be found on the Office for Substance Abuse and Mental Health SHARP website. Again, we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of these slides so that you don't have to worry about writing those down really quick. And then there's also another online data system that the State Epidemiological Outcomes Work Group uses to house and share data that they collect. And so that's that last website. And then that website does kind of go beyond just SHARP data. There's also other substance abuse prevention related data on that website as well. For example, there's like a lot of data around the consequences of substance use, things like alcohol related motor vehicle accidents, different kinds of diseases that are related to either alcohol or tobacco use and those kinds of things. And so these are some of the different ways that you can access the data. But we're really excited to kind of highlight the Sharp Web tool today, which is probably the way that you can really get into the data the most in depth. All right, so just kind of an overview. There's the web address for the web tool, and then we'll kind of get into all of these different functions much more in depth. But there's three ways that the Sharp Web tool allows you to look at the data. You can look at kind of these categories or by topic, so different items and scales that are topically based. You can also kind of drill down at the variable level. And then probably most excitingly, and the thing that we're going to spend the most time with the demonstration is the crosstabs. And that allows you to look at relationships between any two items or scales that are on the survey. And so it really allows you to kind of explore the data and look and see, kind of answer some questions that you might have about what's going on in the state or the region or even school district level. So the last slide has my contact information, and feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the demonstration. All right. So when you go to the Sharp Web tool, this is kind of the landing page. And there's the different, just for reference, there is this little start that has a link to a document on how to use the Sharp Web tool. So if you click on that, this will kind of be an overview of everything that we talk about today. There's also an older training video that I did quite a while ago that you can watch if you wanted to see this one again, or I think this one's being recorded as well, so this is a little more up to date. But there is a video that's also available. And then you can link to the different ways of looking at the data up here, either categories, variables, or crosstabs. And then there's also the web tool is the first data resource for Sharp that allows you to go to smaller levels than just the 13 regional substance abuse authorities, or which also align with the health districts across the state. And you can actually view data at school district level if you have permission from the school district to view their data. And if you do, what'll happen is the school district will actually set up a user account for you that gives you permission to look at their data as well as being able to look at kind of the publicly available data at state and regional levels. So if you do work with the school district to get permission, you will get like a user set up for you, and then you can log in through this little link up here. All right, so let's kind of jump in. So the first way that you can kind of look at the data within the Sharp Web tool is the categories view. And this is basically just gives you the ability to look at data around a specific topic so that you can look at something like bullying and see all the different items that we collect on bullying in one place. And so when you look at, for instance, with this, you're looking at the kids that answered that they had been bullied one or more days, as well as whether they were bullied through the internet, email, or electronic device. And so with each topic view or category view, you're going to see both a chart as well as a table that presents the data within the chart. And you can also mouse over the charts to see the values as well there. But the nice thing about this is you can actually copy like these as an image, and then you can paste them into a PowerPoint if you're doing that, or a Word document if you're putting a report together. And you can also export the data from the table, or you can just kind of copy and paste it into Excel or something like that if that works for you, works better for you. But you can export the data using the little link at the bottom as well. one thing that so up here, what you'll see is kind of, the choice of the topic of data. So we were just looking at bullying. We could also look at data around perception of risk. And then you can kind of see these are all the items around the perception of risks of drug use. So we've got data for, how risky would it be for someone to take one or two drinks of alcohol, to take five or more drinks of binge drinking, to smoke one or more packs of cigarettes per day, to smoke marijuana regularly, and so forth. Um, so your first thing here is kind of the topic that you're looking at, and then you can also look at either state or LSA or regional level data. Um, so if you wanted to look at a specific region within the state, you can click on that, and then from there you can pick the specific one that you want to look at. So if we pick Davis County, now it's showing us data for Davis County. Um, and when you look at non-state level data, when you're looking at sub-state level data, what you'll see here is you'll have the bars, which represent that area or Davis County. And then now you see these little diamonds in here. That's your state comparison point. So the charts switch when you go to sub-state level data, they switch so that you can look at the area and how it relates to the state data. Any questions so far? All right, awesome. Another thing I like to point out here is this participation table link. So what this will tell you is the participation for whatever entity you're looking at, whether it's state level data or regional level data. And this can be really important, something to look at anytime you're looking at survey data. It's always good to kind of know something about the sample for the year that you're looking at. Sometimes you might see, especially, this doesn't really apply so much to state level data or to larger regions, but if you live in a smaller area where the sample of the survey kind of can fluctuate from year to year, it can be really important to kind of understand whether or not you are having those fluctuations and whether they might account for differences or changes that you see in the data from year to year. Um, so this participation table is really nice because it will allow you to kind of just see what the participation was for whatever year you've selected. You can change the year here and kind of see. So when you do look at trend data, and especially if you live in a smaller area, um, and you see like a big change in the data from year to year, one place that I would definitely recommend that you look first is kind of at the sample size just to see whether or not um, there was something weird with participation that for the year that looks a little bit out of place before you attribute that to like an actual change in youth behavior or youth attitudes, that kind of thing. Again, at the state level or for these larger areas, it's not going to be as much of an issue, but if you're in a smaller area of the state, that could be an issue. Or if you have school district level permission, that could also be an issue as you start to drill down to smaller levels. All right, so we go back to categories. So this is really similar. The categories view is really similar to what you've seen in the profile reports for the SHARP that we do every year. So like for example, this one, the protected profile is going to be almost exactly the same thing that you're going to see in the profile report because this is a category view that we provide in the profile report. But what the website allows us to do is to show you a lot more data on a lot more topics. So you're going to see things like the protective profile chart. You're going to see the risk factor profiles. You're going to see some of the substance use data as well in the profile reports. But online, we have a much longer list of topics that we can show you just because we're not constrained by space limitations. The other thing that's really nice about the website is that if there are future topics that coalitions really could use uh, a set of indicators to that we could put together in a new category view. That's something that we could actually customize and add to the system. So if there is like a grant that a lot of coalitions are getting that you have to do the same reporting of the same data from the chart for. let us know because that's something that we can put together into a new category view for you. So that way you don't have to go and look for the data separately, each item separately. We can kind of put together a category view that has the data that you need for your reporting in one place for you. So just let us know if there's things like that that do come up. All right. So then also from the category view, when you're looking at the data table, so let's say you were looking at the protective factor profile, and you're kind of seeing data here that's really interesting to you, and you want to drill down into a specific protective factor. Let's say family attachment for this example. You can actually click in here at the table. It'll take you down into the variable view, where you're looking at just the data for that single item or scale. And at the variable view, what you're going to see is just a drill down to grade level data for that specific item or that specific scale. So it just is a convenient way to kind of go from this topical view down to a single item. And then you can always go back to the topical view as well. So yeah, so that we just try to make it as easy to kind of just, follow your curiosity with the data. Okay, so that's kind of your variable and categories views, which are, going to be pretty familiar to what you see, what you've and how you've used the data in the past with the profile reports. Just expanding the access of topics that you have available. And then what I want to spend the most time is on the crosstabs tool. And this is the view that really, I think, allows for a lot of exploration of the chart, and allows you to kind of get your hands dirty a little bit. So what the crosstabs allows you to do is to look at the relationships between two different items or scales that are on the survey. And there's a bunch of information here, kind of support stuff when you're using this for the first time, that hopefully will kind of help you remember things that we've talked about today. But there is a how to use crosstabs document here that you can click on, and it'll pull up a kind of a step-by-step guide, as well as talk you through how to look at the tables that you're going to see. So it's just a good review of everything that we're going to talk about in the next 20 minutes or so. And there are also some other links here that I'm going to show you. You also have your participation table. That's the same link that you saw before, where you can kind of see what the participation level was for whatever you selected into the entity and for the year. But let's go ahead and look a little bit at what the crosstabs can do. So let's say that we were kind of interested in attitudes about alcohol use and how they relate to actual alcohol use. One thing that we could look at just for starters. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so for our first example, we're going to kind of look at the relationship between um, risk of harm, perceived risk of harm, and 30-day alcohol use. Um, so what you see here is um, we have two different questions that we're going to put in because, like I said, this allows you to look at the relationships between two different items or two different scales. So question one is always going to be kind of think of it as your outcome variable. It's the thing that you want to see, understand what the behavior that you want to understand. And question two is your predictor variable. So this is the one that you want to understand the relationship of this on the first variable, on the outcome. So in our first example, we're going to look at 30-day alcohol use as the outcome, and we're looking at perceived risk of harm as the predictor. And so what we get when we put in, once we have two items specified in question one and two, is a bunch of tables. And we just want you to look at the first table first. And this one is all grades combined. So this is grades 6, 8, 10, and 12. and at the state level. Right now, we're looking at state level data. So what you're seeing here is of the kids that said there is no risk, people don't risk harming themselves if they drink or if they take one or two alcoholic beverages nearly every day. Um, of the people that said there's no risk to doing that, 3% of the kids had indicated 30-day alcohol use in the past 30 days. And then 97% had said they had not used. For the kids that say slight risk, you can see that 7% of the kids had used alcohol in the past 30 days. And if you compare that with the kids that say great risk, um, you can see that it is much more likely that they've used alcohol if they say moderate or slight risk. And it is also a little bit more likely if they say no risk at all. So only 2.4% of the kids that said there is a great risk of harming yourself if you drink one or two drinks per day. Only 2.4% of the kids said that they drank in the past 30 days. If they said moderate risk, then that jumps up to 4.3. And if they say slight risk, it goes to 7.2. And then the kids that say no risk had 3% of those kids said that they had used alcohol. So it's kind of linear here, going from great risk, where it's a really low percentage, to a higher likelihood with moderate and slight. And this seems probably a little bit out of place because you would think that would be even higher. But it's kind of one of those things where we just get very few kids that say no risk. And so because of that, it's just kind of a weird result where we don't see that last tick up at the end of the line there. But you can see certainly as perceived risk decreases, there's a much higher likelihood of alcohol use. So what you're going to see when you pick your data is you're going to see data for you're going to see a bunch of tables. The first table is all grades combined. And then the next four tables are going to be data broken out for each grade separately. So this is going to be the look for sixth graders. So you're looking at the same thing. So of sixth graders, of the kids that say great risk of harm, only 0.4% had reported use. Kids that say moderate risk, there was a 1.3% had said they used. So still a very small percentage, but about three times as likely. And then slight risk goes up to 3.3%. So that another almost tripling of likelihood. But again, that's a very small percentage from an objective standpoint. And then you've got your eighth grade data, your 10th grade data, and then your 12th grade data. Um, so one thing, the reason why you in the past, if you've used the web tool, you only saw one table at a time. But with the 2025 data being uploaded, we had to switch the presentation of the data around a little bit because um, probably most of you are aware, but there in 2025 we actually did two versions of the survey, one for sixth graders and then one for eighth, 10th, and 12th graders. And the sixth grade survey is quite a bit shorter than the survey that eighth through 12th graders get. So it doesn't have all the same items on it. And so when you're looking at the crosstabs, this is going to be your clue as to whether or not sixth graders answer that question or answer both questions in the crosstabs. If you don't see a table for sixth graders, that means that sixth graders did not answer at least one of the two questions that you're looking at cross-tabbing right at the moment. So if that is the case, what you'll see is you'll see that it'll go from all grades combined to the eighth grade table next. And it's also really important to keep in mind that if that is the case, that the all grades data does not include sixth graders. And where this could be important is if you are looking at cross-tab relationships for 2025 and trying to compare them to cross-tab relationships for previous years like 2023 or 2021. Because in 2021 and 2023, sixth graders had the same survey. And so when you do a crosstab of the same items for those previous years, the all grades combined data is going to have sixth graders in it. But in 2025, because sixth graders didn't do one of those questions, the all grades data will not have sixth graders in it. And so it's not going to be an apples to apples comparison. So it's really important. It is a little nuance that you're going to have to kind of be aware of, um, but the benefit is us being able to have a shorter and more appropriate survey for sixth graders moving forward. Any questions on that?
We're not seeing any yet, Ed, so, and there's
Okay,
nothing in the
great.
chat. Just wanted to make sure we're watching that.
Awesome. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything. Okay, so one thing that's really important is that you do have the questions in the right order. So again, question one is the thing that you're kind of looking at as your outcome variable, and question two is your predictor variable. If you get those if you swap those on accident, the results that you're going to look at are going to be really different than what you're wanting to see. And if that happens, we built in a little reverse questions button here so that you can quickly switch the questions so that you can get it to the output that you're looking at. So right now, those same two questions, what the tables would be showing now is based on 30-day alcohol use. How are kids responding to the question about perceived risk? So of the kids that have used alcohol in the past 30 days, 13.8% said there was no risk, 27.7% said that there's slight risk, 34% said that there was moderate risk, and 24% said that there was great risk. So anytime you're looking at these tables in the crosstabs, you're going to read down the column, each column. That is kind of the way that you need to look at the data. And again, in that how to use crosstabs document, you can always refer back to that because it will also talk you through how to look at the output tables. And what's worked really, I think, for most people is to do a bunch of these crosstabs and just to play around with the site for a little while and talk yourself through the output until it really clicks, because it does take a little bit of practice for it to kind of just, come together in your head as far as what you're looking at. But it's really helpful just to kind of talk through it. And then at some point, when you've done enough talking through and looked at enough data, it'll really kind of make sense. And hopefully after that, every time you look at one of these tables, you'll just read it out the appropriately. So again, yeah. So if you do get the questions in the wrong order, just use that reverse questions button to kind of swap the questions out. So as you know, the survey is a very long, very big survey. There's over 200 questions actually on the survey. And so a couple things to keep in mind are that when you're trying to find the questions that you want to cross tab, if you kind of just click on the question field, you're going to see all of these questions. Plus, you're going to see risk factor scale and protective factor scales in here as well. So it's just a really long list, and it can be really hard to get through to find what you're looking for. So we built in a couple things to kind of help with that. One is a filter. So this kind of is a way to, if you're wanting to kind of look at a 30-day use rate as your outcome, if you click on this, now you're only gonna see the questions that are related to 30-day substance use. So it's a much shorter list and should be much easier to find what you're looking for. So the filter is kind of breaking down by topic. So for mental health and suicide, these are the questions that we have on the survey. So it's a much shorter list again. So that's one way to kind of narrow down and find the questions that you want to put into the different question one, the outcome, or the question two predictor fields. And you do see these filters for both. It's the same list of filters, but it's just going to make it a lot easier to find the questions that you want. The other thing that we also have in here is a question reference document. So if you click on this, what you're going to see is an actual list of all the questions. And the great thing about this is you can actually do a search for a specific word that you're looking for. So if we were looking for social isolation, we could kind of start with isolate, and then it's going to take us to any time it's, whatever you're searching for. If you're looking for alcohol related questions, you can do a search for alcohol, and you can see there's 44 different references to the word alcohol. So this is another way that you can kind of find the question that you want to look for. And so like if this was the question that you were interested in, you would know it's Q99. And then you can, when you're actually looking for it, they go in order. So it's a lot. Oop, I got to get off this filter. If Q99 is what you're looking for, it's a lot easier to find it once you know what question it is. So I can click on it right there. So one thing to keep in mind with the question reference is that because the survey does change every administration, the questions aren't going to be numbered the same from year to year. So it's going to be really important that whatever year you're doing your crosstab searches for, that you pick the right year here, and it'll just give you the question reference for 2023 or 2025 or whatever, all the way back to 2015. So yeah, so those are some ways that we try to make it a little easier to find the questions that you want to look at the relationships between. Let's go ahead and just so that we can practice kind of talking through the output a little bit more. Let's go through a few more examples. Okay, and if we're looking at 30-day alcohol, another thing we might be interested in is um, you know, what's 30-day alcohol? What's the 30-day alcohol use? How's that related to whether or not kids think that they'd be seen as cool by their peers? So that's Q114C. Okay, so what we're looking at here is 30-day alcohol use as it relates to what are the chances you'd be seen as cool if you began drinking alcoholic beverages regularly. The kids that say there would be a very good chance that I'd be seen as cool, you can see here that 11.5% of those kids had used alcohol in the past 30 days. The kids that said, well, there'd be a pretty good chance that I'd be seen as cool, it's a smaller percentage, down to 7.5%. The kids that say some chance, 9.1% of those kids said that they'd used in the past 30 days. If there was just a little chance, it goes down to 5.8%. And the kids that say there's no or very little chance that I'd be seen as cool, you can see they are very unlikely to have reported 30-day alcohol use in the past. Um, we can also look at things. Sometimes you might be interested in how different substance use, one type of use, relates to other use. So let's look at alcohol use in relation to 30-day marijuana use. So what we're looking at here is of the kids that had not used marijuana. So this, oops, I can't highlight the whole column, unfortunately. But the kids that had said they had not used marijuana in the past 30 days, only 2.4% of those kids had reported 30-day alcohol use. For the kids that had used marijuana in the past 30 days, 52% had used alcohol as well. So pretty good relationship, pretty strong relationship between alcohol and marijuana use. All right. And then again, you can reverse these questions if you wanted to look at marijuana use as how it relates to alcohol use. So now we're looking at of the kids that hadn't used alcohol in the past 30 days, only 1.4% of those kids have reported marijuana use. Whereas of the kids that had reported alcohol use in the past 30 days, about 40% had also used marijuana. So marijuana is a little bit stronger predictor of alcohol use than vice versa. All right, let's look at some other, maybe some vaping data instead. So this is looking at past 30 day any vape use, and let's look at a different predictor. So let's look at perceived availability. So if you wanted to get vape products such as e-cigarettes, vape pens, mods, etc., how easy would it be for you to get some? Um, of the kids that said it would be very hard for me to get these vape products, only 0.4% have reported using a vape product in the last 30 days. When the kids say it would be sort of hard for me to get it, it jumps up to 2%, so about 5 times as likely. The kids that say it's sort of easy to get, 6.6% have used. So much higher likelihood. And then the kids that say it's very easy, that goes all the way up to 19.4%. Let's see. We can also look at things like mental health and suicide. So this is looking at whether a kid had said that they had seriously considered suicide in the past 12 months. And we can look at how that relates to something like social isolation. So what we're looking at here is based on how kids say how they responded to a question of in the past 7 days, I've felt left out. Uh, Whether or not the likelihood that they had seriously considered suicide in the past 12 past year. So the kids that say they've never felt left out in the past 7 days, um, only 4.3% of those kids had said that they had seriously considered suicide at least once in the past year. The kids that say rarely, that jumps up a bit to 7.9%, so not quite twice as likelihood, not quite twice as likely, but a pretty good substantial jump. The kids that say sometimes now, about 15% of those kids say they have seriously considered suicide. And then once you get to often and always, the percentages really are, pretty scary. With over 25% of the kids that say they often felt left out in the past 7 days, saying that they had seriously considered suicide. And then over 40% of the kids that say they've always felt left out, reporting that they had seriously considered suicide. Um, so hopefully you can kind of see just how useful this crosstab tool is for really kind of better understanding, relationships between things. And because we measure so many different outcomes and variables in the SHARP survey, it really allows you to explore your curiosity and see what the relationships look like. Now, there are a few things I do want to go over since we only have about 5 minutes. And these are covered both in the how to use crosstabs as well as in this caution using crosstabs. Uh, but there's a few things I want to talk about. And the first thing is sample size. So whenever you can, when you're doing crosstabs, try to use the biggest sample that you are able to use to answer the question in a way that's meaningful to you. So state level data is going to work for you. Um, do use state level data because the bigger the sample, the more reliable the output's going to be. But of course, if you need to understand it at a regional level, then by all means look at it at the LSA level. So maybe you're in Davis County and you really need to know what's going on in Davis County. That totally makes sense. Go ahead and run it at the county level. Um, Again, the other things to kind of keep in mind are to be a little bit more careful when you're looking at grade level data, especially if you're in a smaller area and you've drilled down to that small area, because now you might be seeing things where if there was a really small sample in a specific grade, you might get something that's a little spurious and something that you might need to be a little cautious with. Um, so again, that's where the participation table can let you know whether that's a really small sample that particular year. The other things that I recommend doing is if you see a really interesting relationship and you are looking at a small level of data, do it for another year as well. Don't do it just for the 2025, do it for 2023, do it for 2021. Is there a good reliability from year to year in that relationship or not? And if it's something that we only see in 2025 and 2021 and 2023 don't look the same and they actually look really different, and we had a small sample size in 2025 for that specific grade, that's where you might want to tone down how much confidence you have in that relationship. So there's ways to kind of just double check yourself and to just to get more confidence in what you're seeing. The other thing that I want us to kind of stress is that when you talk about these crosstabs data, be careful about talking about cause and effect because this is a form of data mining, and it's the web tool can't tell you whether something causes something else. This is just showing you the relationship between those two variables, with one kind of being viewed as the outcome variable and the other as a predictor. Um, but you shouldn't talk about it as one causing the other. So in this case, we wouldn't want to talk about it as, this feeling left out causes kids to seriously consider suicide. What we're looking at is the relationship between these two variables, and we can clearly see there is a pretty strong relationship, but we got to just be careful about talking about it in cause and effect terms. Okay, and then there are a few other things that you might run into. Like I said, there are a lot of questions on the SHARP survey. So many, in fact, that we can't ask them all for every kid. That we actually have, because there's so many questions and we only have a classroom time period to ask those questions, we split the questions into two forms, a Form A and a Form B. Now, a lot of the core questions are found on both Form A and Form B, so that there are many questions on the SHARP survey where the total sample has completed um, those questions. So if there was 50,000 kids in the survey, 50,000 kids have done the core questions that are on both forms. But there are some questions that are only on Form A or they're only on Form B. And for those questions, only half the sample completes them because it's kind of basically every other survey gets distributed as a Form A or a Form B. So what can happen sometimes is when you're running a crosstab, you might you might look for a question that's in as your outcome that's on Form A only, and then you might pick a question as your predictor that's only on Form B. And so what happens there is there's no kids that have answered both those questions because they've only answered, every kid's only going to do Form A or Form B. And so what will happen there is you'll see a table that just says NA in every cell. And so if you run into that, that's the most likely reason is that there weren't any kids that completed both those questions because one question's only on Form A and one question's only on Form B. Um, and again, one way that you can tell, at least with the Form B questions, is most of the items in the question reference are going to start with a Q. So it's just kind of your generic question 32, question 33A, et cetera, et cetera. But then you're going to see a bunch of questions down at the bottom that start with B. And all of these B questions are questions that are only on Form B. And so if for by chance you happen to select a question that's only on Form B, uh, to be one of your two crossed-out questions, and then you pick a question that's only on Form A for your other one, you will see tables that just say NA across the board. All right.
You took us to
I,
the hour.
I
Okay.
did. Yeah, yeah. I mean, usually I can go on and on about this, but since I only have that much time.
Are there
Any
any pressing
questions?
questions right now for Ed? And Ed, what's the best way for us to, if we did have questions, should we be reaching out to maybe a regional director or any of our, maybe our local authority coordinators? What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can always reach out to me as well, but it's great to go through kind of those channels first. But if there's, I've kind of let all of the regional directors as well as coordinators know that I am definitely available to answer questions. So if there is something that they can't help you with, definitely feel free to contact me.
All right. Thank you so much. And what's going on in the chat is they're saying, thank you, you're the best. So helpful. No, these are actual quotes. This isn't me making things up. But really, thank you so much, Ed, for doing that. And as noted, we'll have the slide deck to share out. And as always, this is recorded, so you can go back and watch it if you have any additional questions. It's always nice to see how you go to those drop downs. And if anyone caught We did not look at my nemesis. We looked at one of my favorite tools, which is more of the sharp cross-step tool. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Our next UPCA webinar is on, I'm pulling it up so I can make sure. I believe it's on May 13th. Maybe it's the 20th. It's May 20th, in case any of you were wondering. May 20th, and we hope to see you then. So thank you so much.
Thank you.